Desperate arrival. The escape pod shuddered violently as it hit Earth's atmosphere. Inside, Nera clutched her children tightly to her chest, her four-armed embrace forming a protective cage around them. Her luminescent skin flickered with anxiety, the blue glow dimming as her strength waned. "Hold on, little ones," she whispered, her translator device converting her native clicks and trills into English, the dominant Earth language she had hastily programmed during their desperate flight. "We're almost safe." 10-year-old Lyra, her skin still bright with youthful energy, looked up at her mother with wide, silver eyes. "Will the humans help us, Mother?" 6-year-old Miko simply whimpered, his tiny fingers digging into Nera's exoskeleton. Nera had no answer that wouldn't be a lie. The truth was, she knew almost nothing about humans except what she had gathered from intercepted transmissions. Some indicated kindness and compassion, others spoke of war and cruelty. But when the Drakari hunters had murdered her mate and targeted her family for extermination, Earth had been her only option. Distant enough from the Galactic Alliance to avoid immediate detection, but advanced enough that they might understand her plight. The pod's navigation system blared warnings as they descended too rapidly. Something had broken during their hasty escape. Nera braced herself, using all four arms to secure her children as the small craft plummeted toward a vast expanse of green and brown below. "Impact imminent," the computer announced dispassionately. "I love you," Nera told her children, just before their world exploded into noise and darkness. Jack Sullivan wiped sweat from his brow as he inspected the newest fence post. At 43, he felt twice his age most days, the Montana sun and years of solitary labor etching deep lines into his weathered face. His farm, 200 acres of mostly untamed land with a modest house, barn, and struggling crops, was all he had left after everything else had been taken from him. The distant boom made him flinch instinctively, his body reacting before his mind even registered the sound. It was like thunder, but the sky was clear. Then he saw it, a trail of smoke cutting across the perfect blue, ending somewhere in the eastern woods that marked his property line. "Just my luck," he muttered, tossing his tools into the rusty pickup truck. He'd spent 8 years building a life where no one bothered him. And now something, plane, satellite, who knew, had crashed on his land. That meant people would come. Authorities, investigators, media. The thought made his stomach clench. He considered ignoring it, pretending he'd never seen anything. But what if someone was hurt? Jack might have chosen isolation, but he hadn't abandoned his humanity completely. His truck bounced over the uneven terrain as he followed the smoke plume. When the trees became too dense, he continued on foot, the lingering military training from his youth automatically adjusting his stride to minimize noise. The crash site wasn't what he expected. Instead of twisted metal and burning fuel, he found a smooth oval pod half buried in disturbed earth. It was like nothing he'd ever seen. No wings, no visible propulsion system. Its surface a strange, iridescent material that seemed to shift colors as he approached. "Hello," he called cautiously. "Anyone alive in there?" A section of the pod suddenly liquefied, forming an opening. Jack stumbled back, his hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm that hadn't been there for years. What emerged made him question his sanity. A slender figure stepped out, humanoid but clearly not human. 4 arms, skin that emitted a soft blue glow, and large, silver eyes set in a face too symmetrical to be natural. It was carrying, no, protecting, 2 smaller versions of itself. "Please," the creature said in accented but clear English, "help us." Then it collapsed, its glow flickering dangerously. Nera awoke to unfamiliar sensations, warmth, softness beneath her, and the smell of burning organic matter. Her translator had partially failed, picking up only fragments of nearby sounds. She forced her eyes open, instinctively reaching for her children. They weren't there. Panic surged through her, causing her skin to flash bright red with alarm. She tried to rise but found her body too weak. Her species' ability to photosynthesize had been severely compromised by the crash and days without proper light nutrition. "Easy there," a deep voice said. A human appeared in her field of vision. Male, she guessed, based on the lower vocal register. Tall, with skin darkened by sun exposure, short brown hair streaked with gray, and eyes the color of Earth's sky. "My children," she managed to say, her translator struggling to keep up. "They're okay." The human stepped aside, revealing Lyra and Miko sleeping on a separate surface nearby. The little ones were exhausted but not hurt. "You took the worst of it." Relief flooded Nera, her skin shifting to a calmer lavender. "Thank you," she whispered. The human regarded her warily. "So, you're not from around here." Despite everything, Nera found herself almost smiling at the understatement. "No, we come from a world you call HD 40,307 grams. We are Lumidary. And you speak English." "Translator," she said, tapping the device partially embedded in her neck. "Not working properly now." The human nodded slowly, as if dealing with crashed aliens was a minor inconvenience rather than a world-shattering event. "I'm Jack Sullivan. Nera Vox Klarn." She tried to sit up again, succeeding this time with Jack's reluctant assistance. "We didn't mean to intrude on your world. We were fleeing danger." Something flickered in Jack's eyes. Recognition, perhaps. He knew about fleeing. What kind of danger? "My mate was a scientist. He discovered something the Drakari didn't want known. They killed him." Her voice broke, and her skin darkened to indigo with grief. "They would have killed us too if we hadn't escaped." Jack was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said, "You can stay until you're recovered. Then we'll figure something out." It wasn't the warm welcome she had hoped for, but it was more than she had dared expect. "Thank you, Jack Sullivan." "Don't thank me yet," he said grimly. "If anyone finds out you're here, we'll both have problems bigger than your Drakari." Jack watched the alien. Nera, checking on her children, her forearms moving with surprising grace as she adjusted their coverings and stroked their glowing faces. The situation was surreal. 3 days ago, his biggest concern had been whether the irrigation system would last another season without major repairs. Now he was harboring extraterrestrials. He should have called someone. The government, scientists, somebody who would know what to do with crash-landed aliens. But the moment he'd seen the terror in those silver eyes, he couldn't do it. He knew that look, had seen it in the mirror years ago, when everything had fallen apart. Besides, what would happen to them if he reported their presence? Best case, endless questioning and experiments. Worst case, Jack didn't want to think about it. The smaller child, Miko, she called him, stirred and opened his eyes. The boy saw Jack and shrank back against his mother, making a sound like wind chimes. "It's okay," Nera soothed, her own musical language emerging before the translator converted it. "This human has helped us." Miko stared at Jack with undisguised fascination. "Only 2 arms," he whispered loudly to his mother. Despite himself, Jack felt his mouth twitch toward a smile. "Only need 2, he said, flexing his fingers demonstratively. The boy's skin brightened to a sunny yellow. Jack found himself wondering how their biology worked. The color changes, the glowing, how they sustain themselves. Did they eat food like humans? So far, they hadn't asked for any. As if reading his thoughts, Nera said, "We require sunlight for nourishment, but after the crash." She looked down at her dimmed skin. "We are weakened." Jack nodded. "The sun's going down now, but tomorrow you can sit outside. No neighbors for miles to see you." "The ship," Nera said suddenly. "If it's found." "I dragged it into my barn using the tractor," Jack said. "Wasn't easy. That thing's lighter than it looks, but still awkward. Covered it with tarps." Surprise and gratitude flickered across Nera's face, her skin momentarily brightening. "You've risked much for strangers, Jack Sullivan." He shrugged uncomfortably. Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." Later that night, Jack sat on his porch, nursing a glass of bourbon and staring at the stars. They'd never seemed so close, so relevant before. Somewhere up there were the beings who wanted Nera and her children dead. Somewhere up there was a civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel, yet still cruel enough to persecute a widow and her orphan kids. Some things, it seemed, were universal. The door creaked behind him, and he turned to see Nera silhouetted against the light from inside. She moved hesitantly, still weak but determined. "You should be resting," he said. "I wanted to see your night sky." She sat carefully in the other chair, her 4 arms wrapped around herself. Her glow provided just enough light to illuminate her features, which were less alien the more he looked at them. 2 eyes, a nose-like structure, mouth, facial expressions recognizably conveying emotions despite the anatomical differences. They sat in silence for a while, both looking upward. Finally, Jack asked the question that had been bothering him. "How did you choose Earth? Out of all the planets you could have escaped to?" Nera was quiet so long he thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was soft. "My mate, before he was killed, he studied your broadcasts, your transmissions that leak into space. He found your humans fascinating, contradictory, violent yet compassionate, primitive yet innovative." She turned those silver eyes toward him. "He believed that despite your isolation from galactic society, humans might one day make valuable allies." "Sounds like he was an optimist," Jack said dryly. He was. Her skin darkened again with grief. "But he also believed that individuals matter more than species. That kindness can be found anywhere, if you look hard enough." She glanced at him pointedly. Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Don't make me into something I'm not. I'm just doing what anyone would do." "No," she said simply. "You're not." The quiet certainty in her voice made him look away. He wasn't used to gratitude or admiration anymore. Wasn't sure he deserved it. "What will you do now?" he asked, changing the subject. "Long term, I mean." "Survive," she said. "Protect my children. Perhaps one day, when it's safe, return to our people. But the Drakari are patient hunters. It may never be safe." The resignation in her voice stirred something in Jack, an emotion he'd thought long buried. Protective anger. "We'll figure something out," he said gruffly. "One day at a time." Nera nodded, her glow brightening slightly. They resumed their silent contemplation of the stars. 2 beings from different worlds united by circumstance, and perhaps something more elemental, the universal desire for sanctuary, for home. In the house behind them, the children slept peacefully for the first time since their father's death, their small forms glowing softly in the darkness of Jack Sullivan's spare room, a room that had stood empty for too many years. Growing trust. 2 weeks passed, bringing with them a fragile routine. Each morning, Nera and her children would bask in the direct sunlight on Jack's back porch, their skin gradually regaining its luminescence. In the afternoons, they would retreat indoors, away from potential prying eyes. Though Jack assured them that the nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and visitors were rare. Jack had cleared out the storage room adjacent to the spare bedroom, converting it into a makeshift living space with a mattress on the floor for Mira. The children had taken to sharing the twin bed in the spare room, their small forms curled together like luminous cats. He had expected difficulties, communication barriers, alien behaviors that might threaten his sanity or safety. Instead, he found the Lumidari to be thoughtful, considerate guests. They required little in terms of traditional sustenance, absorbing most of their energy directly from sunlight, though they did enjoy small amounts of certain fruits and clear water as supplements. It was the quiet company that surprised him most. After 8 years of self-imposed isolation, Jack had forgotten what it was like to have others sharing his space. At first, it had been jarring, the soft footsteps, the musical language when they spoke among themselves, the gentle glow that leaked under doors at night. But gradually, these signs of life became comforting rather than intrusive. This morning, He found Nera already on the porch, her skin a healthy azure in the early light. She was alone, the children still sleeping. "You're up early," he said, settling into his usual chair with a mug of coffee. "Your sun is rising earlier each day," she observed. "The angle is changing as well." "Summer's coming," Jack explained. "Days get longer. It'll be good for you and the kids. More sunlight." Nera nodded, her skin shifting to a lighter blue that he'd come to recognize as contentment. Over the past weeks, he'd begun to understand her chromatic emotional language. Red for alarm, indigo for sadness, yellow for joy, purple for calm. "I have been thinking," she said after a moment, "about your kindness to us." Jack shrugged uncomfortably. "Told you, it's nothing special. It is to us." Her large eyes fixed on him with unsettling intensity. "On my world, there is a concept. Shell march, it means life debt. When one saves another's existence, they become bound by mutual obligation and honor." "I don't hold you to any obligation," Jack said quickly. "Perhaps not, but I hold myself to it." She leaned forward slightly. "You have given us shelter and safety. I wish to offer something in return." Jack shifted in his chair. "Look, I am skilled in molecular agriculture," she continued. "I've been studying your crops. They struggle in this soil." Jack blinked, surprised by the change in topic. "The land's not great for farming," he admitted. "Rocky soil, short growing season. But it's what I could afford. With your permission, I could help. My people developed methods to enhance soil composition and accelerate plant growth using natural processes. Nothing that would harm your environment," she added quickly. "Simply encouraging what is already possible." Jack considered this. His meager crops barely sustained him, let alone provided excess to sell. If she could actually improve them. "All right," he said finally. "Show me." The transformation began that very day. Nera collected soil samples from various parts of the field, analyzing them with small devices she retrieved from the crashed pod. She explained each step to Jack with patient clarity, showing him how the lumidary understood the relationship between minerals, microorganisms, and plant health. Jack found himself genuinely interested, asking questions about techniques that might have seemed magical if she hadn't broken them down into logical processes. By midday, Nera had created a natural amendment using materials found on his property. Certain rocks ground to powder, specific wild plants fermented in water, even some of her own species' energy transferred into the mixture. "This will help," she said, handing him a container of what looked like iridescent compost. "Not instantly, but over time. The land will remember how to be fertile." "The land will remember," Jack repeated skeptically. Nera's skin rippled with amusement, a pattern he hadn't seen before. A poetic way of saying the soil's microbial community will be rebalanced. Jack found himself smiling back. Fair enough. As they walked back toward the house, the children came running to meet them. Lyra, the older one, had adapted quickly to Earth's environment, her natural curiosity overcoming initial fear. Maiko remained shyer, but had recently begun shadowing Jack as he performed his daily chores, watching intently as he fixed machinery or tended to the few chickens he kept. "Jack," Lyra called, her English improving daily through the translator and practice. "We found something in the sky." Jack tensed instantly. "What do you mean?" "A metal thing," Maiko said, pointing upward. "It keeps coming back." Nera's skin flashed alarming red. "Satellite," she whispered. "Monitoring." Jack grabbed her arm, one of the lower ones, and pulled her toward the house. Inside. Now. Once they were safely within, curtains drawn, Jack paced the living room. "Could be just a regular satellite," he said, though he didn't believe it. "Or a weather balloon. Plane." "No," Nera said, her voice tight. "I sensed the scanning frequencies. Someone is looking for energy signatures." She wrapped her arms around her children. "For us. The government? Your Drakari hunters. I cannot be certain. Her skin had darkened to a muted gray he hadn't seen before. But we cannot take chances. We should leave. And go where? Jack demanded. If they're scanning from orbit, they'll find you anywhere on Earth. Then we will take our ship and try another world. With what fuel? You said yourself the pod was operating on reserves when you crashed. Nera had no answer to that. Lyra pressed against her mother's side, while Maiko began to emit a soft, keening sound that made Jack's chest ache. Look, he said, softening his tone. Let's not panic. Maybe it's routine surveillance. The military tests stuff all the time out here in the middle of nowhere. And if it's not? Nera asked quietly. Jack didn't have a good answer. The idea of them leaving twisted something inside him, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. We'll figure it out, he said finally. But for now, we limit outdoor time to early morning and dusk. No glowing. No using any alien technology that might emit signals. Nera nodded gravely. Agreed. The atmosphere in the house changed after that, tension threading through their previously comfortable routine. Jack found himself watching the skies constantly, wondering if each distant plane or glint of sunlight was something more sinister. 3 days later, a thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains, bringing with it sheets of rain that drummed against the roof and windows. The Luminary watched in fascination, never having experienced such weather on their arid homeworld. It's beautiful, Lyra whispered, her face pressed against the living room window as lightning fractured the dark sky. Jack smiled despite his worries. That's one way to look at it. Most folks around here just see it as a nuisance. Why? Maiko asked, joining his sister at the window. It brings water. Life. Also floods, power outages, and ruined crops if it gets too heavy, Jack said, though without real complaint. The rain meant they could all remain indoors without suspicion, and the electrical interference might confuse any surveillance. As night fell, the storm intensified. Wind howled around the house's eaves, and thunder cracked overhead with concussive force. Maiko retreated from the window, his skin pulsing anxiously between pale yellow and green. Are we safe? He asked, looking to both Jack and his mother. The house has stood through worse, Jack assured him, ruffling the boy's hair like tendrils without thinking. It was the first time he'd touched either child deliberately, and he pulled back, uncertain if he'd overstepped. But Maiko leaned into the touch, his skin warming to a contented gold. Something in Jack's chest loosened at the sight. Later, after the children had been put to bed, Jack found Nera in the kitchen, staring out at the storm. Her luminescence was dimmed, but still visible in the darkness. A soft blue glow that outlined her slender form. You should probably turn that down, he said gently, gesturing to her glow. Just in case someone's out in this mess. She nodded, concentrating until her light faded to almost nothing. In the near darkness, with just the occasional flash of lightning illuminating her features, she looked almost human, a thought that unsettled Jack more than it should have. I have been unfair to you, she said suddenly. How so? I haven't told you everything. She turned to face him fully. About why we are hunted. Jack leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. I figured there was more to the story. Nera was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. My mate, Torin, was not just any scientist. He was part of a research group developing interstellar portal technology, instantaneous travel between distant points in space. Jack whistled softly. That's advanced. Yes, the implications would be enormous. It would change the balance of power in our sector of the galaxy. Her voice lowered. The Drakari wanted exclusive control of this technology. When Torin refused to give them sole access to his research, they did not just kill him, they'd erased him, made it seem as though he and his family had never existed. And you escaped with what? His research. Nera's hand moved to touch a pendant around her neck, a small crystalline structure that Jack had assumed was merely decorative. Everything. The complete portal theory, experimental data, prototype designs. Jack stared at her. "You're carrying technology that could start an interstellar war around your neck." "It is the only leverage we have," she said simply. "The only reason they haven't simply bombarded this planet to eliminate us. They want the research intact." The implication staggered Jack. He'd thought he was harboring refugees, not potentially the most valuable beings in the galaxy. "Why tell me this now?" Lightning flashed, illuminating the sorrow in Nira's eyes. "Because you deserve to know the true danger. And because," she hesitated, "because I need to ask something difficult of you." Jack tensed. "What?" "If they find us, if they come for us, take this." She removed the pendant, holding it out to him. "Hide it. Keep it safe. It must not fall into Drakari hands. And what happens to you and the kids in this scenario?" Her silence was answer enough. "No," Jack said flatly, pushing the pendant back toward her. "That's not happening." "Jack?" "No," he repeated, more firmly. "I'm not planning for your death. We're going to figure this out together." Nira stared at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Then, slowly, her skin began to glow again, not with the usual blue, but with a warm, rose-gold color he had never seen before. "What does that color mean?" he asked quietly. Instead of answering, she placed one hand, her upper right, against his cheek. The touch was feather-light, but sent warmth spreading through him like a shot of good whiskey. "It means," she finally said, "that Torin was right about humans." Before Jack could respond, the moment was shattered by the sound of breaking glass from the front of the house, followed immediately by Lyra's scream. They reached the children's room in seconds. The window was broken, rain and wind whipping the curtains. Lyra stood protectively in front of Maiko, both children glowing bright red with terror. On the floor lay a metal object the size of Jack's fist, blinking with strange lights. "Tracking device," Nira gasped, her skin pulsing with alarm. "They found us." Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed the device with his bare hand. Ignoring the shock it sent up his arm, and hurled it back out the window as far as he could throw. "Get the kids to the cellar," he ordered, already moving toward the gun cabinet in his bedroom. "Now." Nira gathered both children in her 4 arms, following Jack's directions to the hidden cellar door in the kitchen. Underground, the storm's fury was muted to a distant rumble. The space was small but solid, originally a tornado shelter built by the previous owner. Jack joined them moments later, carrying a shotgun, a hunting rifle, and a handgun he hadn't touched in years. "Will those harm Drakari?" Nira asked, eyeing the weapons. "Let's hope we don't have to find out." Jack checked the ammunition with practiced hands. That thing might have just been routine surveillance. Maybe they don't know exactly where you are yet. Even as he said it, they all heard the unmistakable sound of an engine. Too loud for a car, too low for a plane, descending toward the farm. Maiko began to cry, a haunting sound like crystal wind chimes in a breeze. Lyra hugged him fiercely, her own glow fluctuating between red fear and a determined orange. "They're coming," the girl whispered. Jack met Nira's eyes over the children's heads. The resignation he saw there sparked something primal within him. A fury he thought he buried years ago, alongside everything else he'd once cared about. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and intense. "No one is taking you or the kids. You hear me? No one." Nira's expression shifted from despair to confusion. "But they will destroy everything. Your home, your farm." "Let them try." Jack checked the shotgun's action with a decisive click. "This is still my land, and you're under my protection now." Understanding dawned in Nira's silver eyes, along with something else, something that made her skin shimmer with that same rose-gold hue from earlier. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk everything for us?" Jack had asked himself the same question every day since he dragged their crash pod into his barn. The answer had been evolving, changing, growing more complex with each shared meal, each lesson about alien agriculture, each moment watching the children discover Earth with wonder in their eyes. But now, with danger literally descending from the sky, the answer crystallized into something simple and undeniable. "Because you're my family now," he said, "and I'm not losing another family." Before Nera could respond, the cellar door above them rattled violently. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. Jack raised his shotgun, positioning himself between the aliens and the door. For the first time in 8 years, he felt fully alive, purpose and clarity burning through him like wildfire. "Stay behind me," he said, "and whatever happens next, remember, Earth isn't as defenseless as they think." A new family. The cellar door shuddered under repeated impacts. Dust filtered down from the ceiling, dancing in the dim light of the single bulb overhead. Jack's finger hovered near the shotgun's trigger, his breathing controlled and measured, falling back on training he hadn't used in nearly a decade. Behind him, Nera had gathered the children against the far wall, her 4 arms creating a protective barrier around them. Both children had stopped glowing entirely, an instinctive defense mechanism Jack hadn't seen before. "Jack," Nera whispered urgently. "Drakari armor is resistant to projectile weapons." "Good thing I'm not aiming for their armor," he replied grimly. "I'll be targeting joints, visual sensors, anything exposed." The pounding paused. In the sudden silence, they heard footsteps moving away from the cellar entrance. "Are they leaving?" Lyra whispered hopefully. Jack shook his head, finding another way in. His mind raced through the farm's layout. The cellar has an emergency exit, previous owner's paranoia. It comes out in the woods, about 50 yards from the house. Nera nodded quickly. "We should." The sound of splintering wood interrupted her as something heavy crashed through the farmhouse floor above them. A new threat. They were cutting directly through the house to reach the cellar. "No time," Jack decided. "We make for the barn. Your ship, can it fly at all?" "Minimal maneuvering capability remains," Nera confirmed. "Enough to reach orbit perhaps, but not to break gravitational pull entirely." "It'll have to do." Jack moved to the emergency exit, a narrow tunnel secured by a rusted metal door. "Once we're out, run straight for the barn. No stopping, no matter what. I'll cover you." Nera's skin pulsed with determination as she nodded. "Children, stay close to me." Jack wrenched the emergency door open, wincing at the screech of unused hinges. The tunnel beyond was low and narrow, fine for the luminary's slender forms, but Jack would have to crouch. He went first, shotgun at the ready, senses hyperalert. The exit emerged exactly where he remembered, behind a cluster of oak trees at the edge of his property. Rain still pounded down, reducing visibility, but also potentially masking their movements. The barn loomed as a darker shadow through the downpour, perhaps 200 yards of open field away. Jack scanned the area before signaling Nera forward. "Ready?" She emerged with a child clinging to each side, all 3 of them instantly drenched by the rain. "Ready," she confirmed, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Now," Jack urged, and they broke into a run across the open field. They made it perhaps 50 yards before the night exploded with light. A searing beam cut through the darkness, striking the ground mere feet from them. The earth where it hit instantly crystallized, superheated into glass by whatever energy weapon it fired. "Keep going," Jack shouted, turning to face the threat while still moving backward. 3 figures were advancing from the direction of the house, humanoid but wrong somehow, their proportions slightly off, movements too fluid. Each stood at least 7 feet tall, encased in segmented armor that seemed to absorb the rain without getting wet. Their helmets featured no visible eye slits, just a smooth, reflective surface that curved around the front of their elongated heads. "Drakari." Jack raised the shotgun and fired. The blast caught the nearest hunter in what would be the shoulder on a human, staggering it briefly but causing no apparent damage. He fired again, aiming lower, and was rewarded with a shower of sparks from the being's knee joint. Another energy beam sliced through the air, close enough that Jack felt his skin blister from the heat. He dove and rolled, coming up with the shotgun still aimed. "Go," he yelled to Nera, who had hesitated at the edge of the fight. "Get to the ship." She nodded once, sharply, and sprinted toward the barn with the children. Jack emptied the shotgun into the approaching hunters, each shot more precisely targeted than the last. One Drakari was now moving with a pronounced limp, but all three continued their relentless advance. He switched to the hunting rifle, dropping to one knee to steady his aim. The storm had intensified, lightning splitting the sky and momentarily illuminating the scene in stark relief. Jack, a solitary human with primitive weapons, facing down three armored aliens with technology centuries beyond Earth's development. The odds were impossible, but Jack Sullivan had faced impossible odds before. His first rifle shot caught a Drakari directly in the faceplate, cracking the smooth surface. The hunter staggered, emitting a high-pitched sound that the storm nearly drowned out. Jack fired again, widening the crack. Whatever visual system the being used was clearly compromised. It began firing its weapon erratically, one beam slicing dangerously close to another Drakari. Jack used the momentary confusion to retreat further toward the barn, firing methodically as he moved. The damaged Drakari suddenly convulsed, its armor sparking wildly as rain penetrated the compromised systems. It collapsed in a smoldering heap. Two left. A deafening crack of thunder coincided with Jack's next shot, the bullet ricocheting harmlessly off the second Drakari's chest plate. The hunter raised its weapon, the barrel glowing with building energy. Jack rolled behind the remains of an old tractor just as the beam cut through the space where he'd been standing. The metal of the tractor hissed and bubbled where the energy grazed it. He was pinned down, still 70 yards from the barn. Through sheets of rain, he could see Nera struggling with the barn door, her slender frame ill-suited to moving the heavy, waterlogged wood. One of the Drakari had noticed too. It broke off from its companion, moving with inhuman speed toward the barn, toward Nera and the children. "No!" Jack shouted, abandoning cover to sprint after it. The remaining hunter fired, the beam sizzling past his ear close enough to burn. Jack didn't slow. He raised the rifle and emptied it into the Drakari heading for his family, the impacts slowing it but not stopping its advance. When the rifle clicked empty, he dropped it without hesitation and drew the handgun, his last weapon. The Drakari reached the barn just as Nera managed to pull the door open. Jack saw Lyra scream, her glow flaring bright red with terror as the hunter loomed over them. Nera pushed the children behind her, standing defiant despite being outmatched in every way. Jack's world narrowed to a single focal point. He'd lost one family to violence. He would not lose another. With a roar that tore from somewhere deep inside him, Jack covered the final distance, firing the handgun with deadly precision. The Drakari turned, raising its weapon, but Jack was already upon it. He crashed into the alien with his full weight, sending them both sprawling into the mud. The hunter was stronger, its armored limbs lashing out with devastating force. Jack felt ribs crack, his breath expelled in a pained gasp. But he had fought desperate battles before, had been trained to use an opponent's strength against them. As the Drakari attempted to stand, Jack jammed the barrel of his handgun into the joint where helmet met chest plate and fired repeatedly, emptying the magazine. The hunter convulsed, its movements becoming erratic. Jack scrambled away, gasping for breath, as the alien systems failed catastrophically. Its armor flashed with electrical discharges before going dark. "Jack." Nera's voice cut through the haze of pain and adrenaline. "The last one." He turned to see the third Drakari approaching, its weapon leveled directly at him. There was nowhere to run, no cover to reach. Jack straightened as much as his injured body would allow, facing death with the same determination he'd faced everything else in his life. The hunter paused, as if surprised by this display of defiance. In that moment of hesitation, something extraordinary happened. A pulse of pure energy, brilliant blue-white, shot from behind Jack, striking the Drakari with devastating precision. The hunter's armor seemed to collapse inward, its powerful form crumpling like an empty suit. Jack turned to see Nera standing at the barn entrance, her pendant, the one containing her mate's research, glowing with fading light in her outstretched hand. "What?" Jack managed, struggling to stay upright. "A prototype," Nera said, her voice weak. "One use only. Torrens' last defense." She swayed, her skin dimming to a worrying gray. Jack stumbled to her side just as she collapsed, catching her in his arms despite the pain that lanced through his damaged ribs. "Mother." The children rushed forward, their small hands reaching for Nera. "She's all right," Jack assured them, though he wasn't entirely certain. "She's just exhausted. Help me get her into the ship." Inside the barn, the pod looked even more alien than Jack remembered, its sleek, iridescent surface reflecting the storm's lightning in otherworldly patterns. The children helped him carry Nera to the craft, its entrance liquefying at their approach just as it had when they'd first emerged. The interior was cramped but surprisingly functional. Jack laid Nera gently on what appeared to be a padded surface designed for rest. "Will she wake up?" Maiko asked, his voice small and frightened. "Yes," Jack said with more confidence than he felt. "She's strong. Strongest person I've ever met." Outside, the storm continued to rage. Jack knew they couldn't stay. The hunting party might have sent coordinates to others, and more Drakari could arrive at any moment. "We need to go," he said gently to the children. "You need to tell me how to start this thing." Lyra looked at him with confusion in her silver eyes. "But you're not coming with us." The statement hit Jack like a physical blow. Of course he wasn't, couldn't. This was their ship, their escape. He was just, what? The human who had helped them. A temporary sanctuary on a planet they never intended to stay on. Before he could respond, Nera stirred, her skin gradually brightening from gray to a faint blue. "Jack," she whispered, reaching for him with one of her 4 hands. He took it without hesitation. "Save your strength. You need to leave soon." "No," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Not without you." Jack blinked, sure he had misunderstood. "Nera, I can't. This isn't my world, my place." It could be. Her skin shifted to that same rose gold he'd seen before. On Lumidari, when one saves a family, they become family. When one protects at risk of their own life, the bond is unbreakable. Her silver eyes held his with unwavering certainty. "You are Ksholmar now. Family by choice, by sacrifice." "She's right," Lyra added earnestly. "You belong with us, Jack." Meko nodded vigorously, his small hand finding Jack's. "You're our protector now." Jack's throat tightened, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. For 8 years, he'd lived in isolation, convinced that family and belonging were luxuries he no longer deserved after failing to protect those he loved before. Yet here, in the most unlikely circumstances imaginable, he'd found something he thought lost forever. "What about Earth?" he asked, practical concerns filtering through the emotional haze. "My planet, my species." Nera sat up slowly, her strength visibly returning. "Earth will be here. And with Torrens' research, travel between worlds will be possible in ways never before imagined. You would not be saying goodbye forever." "And the Drakari?" "We have allies," Nera said. "My people, the Lumidari, have connections throughout this sector of the galaxy, with proof of Drakari aggression on a protected world. Earth is considered a developing planet, off-limits for interference. We can seek sanctuary and justice." Jack looked around the small ship, at the alien technology beyond his comprehension, at the 2 children watching him with hope in their luminous eyes, at Nera, this remarkable being who had crashed into his life and changed everything. "I don't know the first thing about space travel," he admitted. Nera's skin rippled with amusement. "And I knew nothing of chickens or Earth agriculture before meeting you. We learn. We adapt. That is what family does." A deafening boom shook the barn, not thunder this time, but something far more ominous. Through the gaps in the wooden walls, Jack saw lights descending from the stormy sky. More hunters. Time to decide, Nera said urgently. Jack Sullivan looked back once at the farm that had been his prison and sanctuary for 8 years. Then he turned to his new family. "Let's go home," he said. The small ship rose from the burning remains of Jack Sullivan's barn, accelerating through the storm clouds with surprising grace despite its damaged systems. Inside, Jack held tightly to a support rail as the craft shuddered and bucked, his other arm wrapped protectively around Miko. Across from him, Lyra monitored screens displaying information he couldn't begin to decipher, her young face set in determined concentration. At the ship's controls, Nera's 4 hands moved with practiced precision, guiding them higher and higher until the storm fell away beneath them, replaced by the breathtaking vista of stars against the blackness of space. "Earth looks different from up here," Jack said softly, gazing at the blue-green curve of his homeworld through a viewport. "All worlds do," Nera replied, her voice gentle. "It's why perspective matters." As they accelerated away from Earth's gravity well, Nera activated a communication system. "This is Neravox Klarn, widow of Torin Klarn, requesting emergency sanctuary for myself, my children, and our Kashalmar human ally. We have evidence of Drakari treaty violations and unauthorized aggression against a protected species." To Jack's surprise, a response came almost immediately, musical tones that the ship's system translated into English for his benefit. "Sanctuary granted, Neravox Klarn. Coordinates being transmitted for rendezvous with Lumidary diplomatic vessel." Relief washed over Nera's features, her skin brightening to a vibrant blue. "We're safe," she told the children, who immediately began glowing with joy. Lyra a brilliant yellow, Miko a warm gold. Jack felt a moment of vertigo as the reality of his situation truly hit him. He was leaving Earth, possibly forever, becoming part of an alien society, a different species family unit. It should have terrified him. Instead, he felt only certainty. This was right. This was where he belonged. "What happens now?" he asked. Nera turned to him, her expression softening. In the ship's gentle illumination, surrounded by the glow of her children, she looked ethereal, beautiful in a way that transcended species or origin. "Now," she said, reaching for his hand with one of her own, "we build something new, together." Miko yawned, his small body finally succumbing to exhaustion after the night's terror. He curled trustingly against Jack's side. "Tell us a story about Earth," Lyra requested, her eyes heavy-lidded but still curious. "Something we should know about your world." Jack thought for a moment, then smiled. "Well, there's this old Earth saying, home isn't a place, it's the people." He looked around at the 3 glowing beings who had crashed into his life and illuminated its darkest corners. "I never really understood what that meant until now." As the ship accelerated toward their rendezvous point, Earth receded behind them, the blue jewel set against the vastness of space. But Jack Sullivan wasn't looking back. For the first time in years, he was looking forward, toward a future bright with possibilities and the warm glow of family. His family.